some of these forms, maybe the people who signed them didn't really read for sure or understand fully what they were signing, and that they may have actually, maybe they did understand. I shouldn't say they didn't understand. I don't know if they did or did not, but what some of the questions that have been raised and I've been asked is that maybe that now they've prohibited the release of a lot of information on their students that could be things that restrict the release of information to colleges requesting transcripts, to student performance when requested, to students as athletes' performance, that maybe students who expect to go on to college or go or want to be recruited, that now some of the forms that are floating around severely restrict the information. And I just want to make sure that if a parent has signed this form that has these restrictions in it, I understand the students, when they present the forms, they did opt out of the testing, didn't take the testing, but we need to make sure that their rights that they've exercised are fully protected, meaning, if a lot of this information, I don't want to have a form on hand, and I don't know, I'm just throwing this is just an item of concern I think we need to make sure we look into, because if these forms restrict the release of a whole plethora of information, we as a board need to make sure that that's honored and protected, because we don't want to turn around next week and be releasing information, or a month from now, when maybe juniors are starting to go to college and look at colleges, and all of a sudden colleges want information. We got to make sure that we, honor that. I just had that brought to my attention that some of these forms were much broader than maybe people thought about. So.
I think people also need to be aware that there are states and some post-secondary colleges and universities that look at the summative assessment. Many times we believe, because we live in West Virginia today, that what decisions we're making may be okay, but once you graduate and you're looking at post-secondary, or maybe while you're still in school, maybe you opted out as a freshman or a sophomore, and then you go to a state that doesn't, they have policy that does not allow it. I don't know where that leaves those students. And what I hope that parents would understand is that this summative assessment, it is really no different than what we've taken for the history of education. It's just that this is the first year for this particular one, where the base data will be looked at and evaluated to see how that we are addressing these next generation standards, and where the individual student, what their performance measures are. Now, in our classrooms, when you're doing test calls, and you're doing data walls, and you're trying to see how to bring that student up to mastery, if necessary, or to excel them. It may be a student that's already there. The teacher is going to have nothing. Because what you have to understand, what if it's a student that left a middle school and went to a high school? What is the teacher at the next level? What do they have to evaluate? And then again, what do you as a parent have to compare and contrast with other states and where your child is performing, because we are in a global society. And it's not that I promote, support, not support the Common Core curriculum. That was not a decision that we as a board or a superintendent had any say in. And, so we all sit here with this being what West Virginia has signed on to do. And in doing so, it's just like going to get our driver's license. we may not agree with everything on that test, or, you know, the officer who actually administered the test or took us out to the driving range, but that is the law. And so we sit as a board and a superintendent and a school system caught in the middle.
Well, I mean, and I was an attorney for 27 years. I certainly have fought hard for people's rights over the years, and I'm not at all wanting to infringe anybody's rights.
Right.
I think the timing of it was very poor. I think it was timed in a way to be, disruptive, and I frown on that. I also have heard many reports that there were, employees facilitating the thing. And what concerns me is, like you said, is we as a board, there's rules and policies and guidelines, and of course the adoption of the Common Core, that we didn't make those decisions.
No.
And also, the testing was nothing new. I'm 53 years old. Testing's been around as long as I've been around. I mean, it wasn't a surprise to anybody that there was going to be a summative assessment at the end of the year. So I really wish that if people had concerns about their children testing, that they would have approached the board sooner. Well, nobody still has, but had approached the board sooner, so that we could have had some dialogue and discussion about it, because it seemed like everybody kind of got caught up in the moment, and I just really worry about the impact that could have on the children that maybe people haven't really thought through. But I wanted to clarify and make sure from you that when the issue did arise rather abruptly, that you immediately were in contact with the State Department and the state officials, and that you followed their directives on how to handle everything.
Every directive, and of course, I will share with you that there is existing policy 2340 that does apply to employees. And the concern that you stated, if any employee facilitated compromising the test or interfering, it's very clear in policy that that is a violation. And so it's a little bit different for employees and, on the other hand, for students. And I, like you, Trey, I certainly honor and respect everyone's right as a parent and for our students as Americans, because we live in the greatest country and we are afforded, the opportunities that we value and are guaranteed through the Constitution. However, this was not something that would ever be harmful to someone. I mean, there's nothing in it. And as far as confidentiality, all of those things have been, that were initially seen to be a problem. Those things have been looked at and taken care of, so that students' information is indeed confidential.
Well, it's just an example of it. Again, as a parent, I make decisions about my own children as well, and I hope that those will be respected by others. And I understand that parents' right to do that. But, it just seemed like there was a lot of misinformation that was flying around, and everybody kind of got caught up in the moment, and that really kind of saddens me, because I feel like that it was something that the timing of the way that it happened, I think a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of stories about students who got caught up in something that they didn't really mean to. Their parents didn't really understand what was going on, and they just kind of got caught up in the moment. And I think that the staging of it when it occurred was designed for disruption. And I think that's really unfortunate that would happen in our school system, or that anyone would want to see that happen in our school system. And I just hope that we can get some clear answers to everybody, clear direction. And if I understand we didn't have a choice in Common Core as a board. We also didn't have a choice in administering an assessment. It's a requirement that it be done, and it's a requirement for employees to do. So that's just a big item of concern. It's really been very heavy on my mind. It's been very disturbing for me, because I see a lot of people that are friends of mine, you know, that are upset, and they don't know what to do. You know, and they're confused, and they're calling, and they're texting, and it's just you hate to see people upset.
Well, I do want to say, as far as when you look at things on a national level, the NAEP test, which is a national test, has been administered for, you know, that came about back in the 80s, and that has been administered over through now, present day. And then, when I was in school, we had what was called the CPBS test. I may be telling my age. And of course, that was not specific to West Virginia. So I guess we kind of, you know, I think we just have to try to put things in perspective. And hopefully, I will say this, it is my wish that the Department of Education will look at what has happened in our county as well as a few others, and that they will take the initiative to address this situation. What concerned me, if you looked at those opt-out forms, they're just all kinds of different forms. There's no one particular, because there was nothing designed or permitted in West Virginia. So they come from Michigan, they come from all over the place. And, I mean...
Well, I think the fact that no student was forced to take the test obviously shows a sign of respect for your parental rights. And I do appreciate that. I just think, again, that it was just the way that it transpired was very disturbing to me.
Well, or with us as a board, or as Mr. Superintendent, are we going to try to do anything with these facilitators, find out who they